When your boss starts calling you kiddo, you either just got promoted, or you're about to be replaced. That line had been running through my head the morning everything started to change. My name's Ethan Cole, senior analyst at Wexford Dynamics, a company that ran like a Swiss watch, precise, profitable, and painfully political. I wasn't the loudest in the room, but my reports spoke for themselves. Accuracy. Integrity. That's what I built my career on. And for a while, Mark Ellison, our vice president of operations, seemed to appreciate that. He was the kind of boss who made you believe in the system. Firm handshake, polished smile, the "I've got your back" type. Mark took me under his wing when I was just another data grunt pulling 80-hour weeks. He'd bring me into meetings, drop my name in front of directors, and once even said, "Ethan, you've got the sharpest instincts I've seen in years." I believed him. Hell, everyone did. We worked well together. Late nights building presentations that would make the board lean forward in their seats. He'd pat my shoulder. "We're going places, kid." And I thought he meant we. At home I told my wife, "Mark's the real deal. He sees potential in me." She smiled and said, "Just don't let loyalty blind you." I laughed it off. She didn't know Mark like I did, or so I thought. Then came Project Sable, a high-stakes contract that could define the company's next decade. Mark made it clear, this was his ticket to becoming senior VP. He pulled me aside, said, "Ethan, I need you to make this bulletproof. You and me, we'll both come out winners." And for weeks, I gave it everything. Every analysis, every chart, every sleepless night, all feeding into the presentation that would make his career. But then, small things started to shift. My name disappeared from draft decks. My access to certain files got temporarily restricted. A few of my reports had been adjusted, numbers tweaked just enough to change the narrative. When I asked Mark, he brushed it off with that perfect politician's grin. "Relax, Ethan. Just streamlining. You're still my guy. Still his guy." Funny how that phrase stuck in my throat like a splinter. The morning before the big board meeting, I walked into the office early, coffee in hand, ready to polish the final slides. But when I opened the shared folder, my name wasn't there anymore. It was titled, Project Sable, prepared by Mark Ellison. I didn't know it yet, but that was the moment he'd made his first move. And somewhere deep down, a quiet voice whispered, "Something isn't right." For a few days after that morning, I convinced myself it was just a mistake. Maybe a clerical mix-up, or Mark moving fast to finalize the project. I'd seen him handle pressure before. Laser-focused, curt, almost robotic. So when he started ignoring my messages, I told myself, he's just swamped. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Our rhythm was gone. He stopped looping me into meetings. Files I'd been working on suddenly had restricted tags, and whenever I asked about them, IT said the directive came from above. Above me meant Mark. I'd see him in the hallway, all charm and charisma, chatting with the directors, tossing around phrases I'd written, strategic synergy, operational realignment, words that had come straight from my analysis reports. He was quoting me publicly, but without once mentioning my name. Still, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he'd forgotten. Maybe the promotion talk was getting to him. But when I approached him after a meeting, he gave me that same rehearsed smile. "Ethan, you've been doing great work. Don't worry about titles. Your time will come." His tone was calm, but something behind his eyes felt colder. That night, over dinner, my wife noticed I was quiet. "Rough day?" she asked. I nodded. "Just office politics. Nothing new." But even as I said it, the words tasted wrong. 2 days later, another red flag. A colleague, Jenna, from finance, stopped me in the break room. "Hey, weird question," she said. "Did you tell Mark to cut your access to the Sable forecasts?" I blinked. "What? No. Ha. He said you wanted to focus on the creative side, and didn't need the raw data anymore." My stomach tightened. That was a lie. A small one, but deliberate. That afternoon, I checked the shared folders again. My original models, the ones I'd worked nights perfecting, were gone. Deleted. The audit log showed Mark's credentials. When I confronted him, he didn't even flinch. Relax, Ethan. I just cleaned up redundant files. You're overthinking it. Overthinking. That word hit harder than it should have. It's what people say when they're hiding something and need you to doubt yourself. That evening, I stayed late at the office, staring at the glowing monitor, scrolling through versions of documents I no longer recognized. My name was disappearing from everything, little by little. But the strangest part wasn't what I saw on the screen. It was what I found in my inbox just as I was about to shut down for the night, a forwarded message I wasn't supposed to receive. It was from Mark. Subject line, Ethan won't be a problem. No context. No recipients visible. My heart pounded. That was the first moment I realized. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Something darker was unfolding. And I was right in the middle of it. There's a moment between discovery and rage, a silence so heavy it feels like gravity just doubled. The email haunted me all night. Ethan won't be a problem. Those 5 words looped in my head until the sunrise spilled through my blinds like an interrogation lamp. By morning, I wasn't curious anymore. I was determined. At work, Mark greeted me as if nothing had happened. Morning, kiddo. Grab a coffee. Big day ahead. His voice was light, friendly, fake. The board presentation for Project Sable was scheduled for that afternoon. The deal that could define his career. The one I had built, line by line, slide by slide. Still, I played along. Smiled back. Sat at my desk like a ghost in my own life. Around noon, Jenna pinged me. You might want to see this, she wrote. She sent over an early version of the presentation, one I hadn't seen. The slides were identical to my drafts. My structure. My metrics. My conclusions. Every insight I'd worked for. Except the footer read. Prepared by Mark Ellison, VP of Operations. No mention of me. Not a single trace. And then I saw it. A slide with my name on it. Not in the credits. In a footnote at the bottom of a risk analysis page. Initial analyst's projections contained critical errors, later corrected by executive oversight. My blood ran cold. He hadn't just stolen my work. He'd rewritten history to make me look incompetent. I opened the metadata out of instinct. Every edit, every correction, every file move, all timestamped and authorized by Mark. He'd been grooming me for months. Building trust, pulling me close, only to shove me under the wheels right before his climb. When the realization hit, it didn't come with anger. It came with a strange, hollow stillness. Like my mind couldn't process how someone could look you in the eye every day, call you kiddo, and plan your professional execution behind your back. That afternoon, I watched from the conference room glass as Mark took the stage before the board. The same deck. My deck. He smiled like a man accepting a crown. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present Project Sable, the future of Wexford Dynamics. And they clapped. Every single one. Jenna glanced at me from across the room, her face pale. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just watched as my work, my late nights, my marriage strain, my entire reputation, was weaponized by the man I'd trusted most. When the meeting ended, he walked past me with that same polished grin. Good job, Ethan. Couldn't have done it without your groundwork. That word again. Groundwork. Like I'd been the dirt he was standing on. He didn't notice the way I looked at him then. Calm, steady, no tremor in my voice. Because something inside me had shifted. It wasn't disbelief anymore. It was calculation. If he wanted to climb over me to reach the top, I'd make sure the ladder snapped in his hands. For 3 days after the board meeting, I went through the motions, clocking in, answering emails, pretending everything was fine. But I wasn't fine. Every glance in the hallway felt like pity. Every whisper outside my cubicle felt like laughter. Rumors had started to spread, quiet ones, subtle but poisonous. That I'd botched the analysis. That Mark had cleaned up my work before it cost the company millions. I could see it in the way people looked at me, that mix of sympathy and suspicion. Even HR called me in for a friendly check-in. The manager smiled too much when she said, "Just take it as a learning experience, Ethan." A learning experience. Right. That night, I sat alone in the parking garage long after midnight, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My reflection in the windshield looked like someone I didn't recognize, a man gutted by someone else's ambition. The anger came slow. Not loud or violent, just steady. Like a tide rising quietly, swallowing everything in its path. I scrolled through my old messages with Mark. Compliments, inside jokes, shared late-night frustrations. All of it looked so small now. So calculated. And then I saw it, an old email from months ago, when he'd first pulled me onto Project Sable. "Don't worry about credit, kiddo. I'll make sure your work gets the spotlight it deserves." That line stopped me cold. Because in the attached thread below, one I'd never noticed before, was a forwarded note from the CEO. "Good initiative. Let's keep this confidential until we see results." Confidential. He'd been setting the stage from day one. Keeping my name off key communications, isolating me, positioning himself as the project's sole driver. That was the moment the fog lifted. I wasn't the unlucky casualty of office politics. I was the target of a strategy. And if Mark played chess, he'd forgotten one thing. I built the board. I knew every dataset, every report, every revision that went into Project Sable. I knew which numbers were inflated for presentation and which were buried to impress the board. He might have stolen my work, but I still held the truth. So I stopped feeling sorry for myself. Stopped waiting for someone to clear my name. Because if Mark wanted to make me the fall guy, then I'd make him the headline. That night, I opened my laptop. Pulled up archived files. Version histories. Internal memos he thought he'd deleted. And as the glow of the screen lit my face, I whispered to no one. "You took my career, Mark. Now I'm taking yours." It wasn't anger anymore. It was focus. The kind of focus that only comes after you've lost everything worth protecting, except your name. I could have stormed into the CEO's office and screamed the truth into a gilded silence, but rage makes you loud and reckless men lose. I needed a method that matched the crime. Quiet, meticulous, and undeniable. Mark had weaponized subtlety. I would weaponize proof. I called Jenna and told her everything. The deleted models, the edited footnotes, the "Ethan won't be a problem" email. She didn't hesitate. Finance had been watching anomalies for months. She'd noticed numbers that only made sense if someone had reshaped the narrative. Together we slipped into IT's backlog one late night, not to hack, but to request archival pulls through official channels. IT's auditor, Tom, owed me a favor from a year-old budget fight. He pulled the full version history, timestamps, user IDs, IP addresses. Mark's credentials appeared over and over, like footprints across soft snow. I spent nights assembling a document that read like evidence and not emotion. Original models, timestamps, internal chat threads, and the versions Mark had corrected. Each change had a before and after, numbers that changed storylines, phrases that shifted blame. I labeled everything, indexed it, and created a clean, indisputable narrative of who did what and when. Blowing this to the floor would only look like sour grapes. So I quietly looped in Jenna, Tom, and one more person no one expected. Claire, a junior counsel in legal who'd once defended a whistleblower case. I didn't ask for loyalty. I asked only for rigor. Claire's job was to translate our dossier into language the board couldn't ignore. Compliance risk, fiduciary misrepresentation, reputational exposure. Mark's ego was public and performative. He craved credit, press, promotion. I made sure the trap needed him to prove his ownership in a way he couldn't finesse. Claire filed a routine-sounding compliance query, an internal audit request for confirmation of authorship and sign-offs on Project Sable materials. It required Mark to sign off electronically on a chain of edits and to validate the final financial inputs. If he lied, the metadata would contradict him. If he told the truth, he'd admit the corrections. Either way, the audit peeled back the pretty surface. He strutted through the office that week, convinced the board loved him and the promotion was inevitable. He posted a congratulatory note to a small team chat praising our flawless deck. He made phone calls about his new role. He was walking toward the noose thinking it was a red ribbon. On a cold Friday morning, Claire sent the audit notice to Mark and copied the CEO and head of compliance. I sat at my desk, calm as a surgeon before incision, watching Mark log in and prepare his response. My phone buzzed. Jenna's one-word text. Now. Silence tightened in my chest, then opened into a cold, bright clarity. The pieces were in place, the allies sworn, the evidence primed. Whatever happened next would not be noise. It would be proof. The audit notice had done its work, not loud, not dramatic, but surgical. The CEO convened an emergency meeting to review compliance flags. Mark walked in like a man about to claim a prize. He smiled at the board, at the cameras someone had wheeled in for the quarterly update, at the junior staff who still believed in his polish. He was carrying a confidence that smelled like victory. Claire opened the file and began, quietly, methodically. She laid out the timeline, original models, archived versions, and the chain of edits. Each slide had a before and after. Each highlight had a timestamp and an IP address. Tom corroborated the pull. Jenna walked them through the financial shifts, numbers that had been softened, risks buried, and conclusions rewritten to make Project Sable shine. Mark tried to interrupt. Tried to spin it, standardization, executive oversight, cleaning up drafts. But Claire had anticipated everything. She produced the email thread with his own words, the forwarded note she'd found, the message where he'd told a director that Ethan wouldn't be a problem. She read it aloud. The room's temperature dropped. The board chair's face went from curiosity to the color of someone who'd swallowed bad news. The CEO's jaw tightened. For the first time since I'd known him, Mark looked human, not the polished stone of a man who'd never been questioned. Mr. Ellison, the chair said finally, explain how your credentials appear in the edit history for files presented as authored by you. Mark reached for rehearsed phrases, but the metadata is a merciless witness. Every fabricated correction had a footprint. Every reassignment had a signature. His attempts at flattery and half-truths turned brittle under the light. Then came the quietest, most devastating moment. The CEO scrolled through the company's internal social feed and found Mark's public message celebrating Sable's team. He'd thanked everyone who helped make this possible, and had tagged a list of senior sponsors, but not a single mention of the analyst who'd built the architecture. Screenshots of Mark's private boasts to a friend, "Watch me handle this, no one needs to know," flashed across the screen. People who had applauded him days earlier now watched with the rapt, stunned silence reserved for a slow-motion fall. A legal rep asked calm, clinical questions about intentional misrepresentation. The head of compliance announced an external review. The CEO excused Mark from the room, pending investigation. He walked out like a man who'd lost the map to his life. No dramatic shouting, no desperate pleading, just the hollow swing of a suit jacket and the shuffle of shoes. People who'd once asked for selfies with him stared as he passed. In the corridor, a photographer snapped one final image. Mark alone, flanked by a cluster of senior execs who had learned, too late, to distance themselves. Back in the boardroom, the silence that followed was thick and absolute. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt final. I sat very still. My hands were steady. The word kiddo hung in the air like a cheap perfume. Mark's fall mirrored the thing that ruined me, his hunger for the top, taken at the cost of another's life. He wanted the crown so badly he erased the person who'd helped build the throne. When the meeting broke, People shifted, whispered, filed out. Jenna squeezed my shoulder. Claire met my eyes and nodded once. Small, fierce. Tom closed his laptop. Outside the glass, Mark walked past a line of employees, their faces averting him. For the first time, his polish didn't mask the hollowness beneath. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply watched him go. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not victory, but a cold, clean relief, like a room finally cleared of smoke. You said. It had been 3 weeks since the audit meeting, and the air at Wexford Dynamics felt different. Thinner, clearer, like a storm had passed. The company issued a formal statement calling Mark's actions a serious breach of trust and compliance. That was corporate language for "we're done with him." He didn't fight it. There were no lawyers, no statements, no farewell posts. Just one morning, his desk was empty, drawers cleaned, nameplate gone. Someone said they'd seen him at a downtown cafe, suit wrinkled, talking to recruiters who avoided eye contact. The man who used to strut down hallways with a coffee in one hand, and my work in the other, was now just another forgotten name in a resignation memo. But here's the thing no one tells you. Revenge doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like stillness, quiet, heavy, honest. The board quietly reinstated my access. The CEO asked me to step in temporarily to stabilize operations. That word, stabilize, made me laugh. After everything, I was the cleanup crew for the mess I'd predicted months ago. Jenna got promoted to head of finance. Tom was recognized for his technical diligence. Claire's audit summary became mandatory training material for new managers. I made sure of that. As for me, I didn't celebrate. I took a week off instead. No laptop. No late-night calls. Just quiet mornings and black coffee on the balcony, the city humming below like nothing had happened. One evening, my wife joined me outside. She didn't say much, just handed me the old tie I used to wear every day, the one from the first time Mark called me kiddo. "You can burn it," she said with a small smile. I didn't. I kept it. A reminder, not of him, but of the line I'd promised myself never to cross again. When I returned to work, the board announced they were reassessing leadership structure. A week later, my name appeared in the memo. Ethan Cole, Acting Vice President of Operations. No applause. No speech. Just my name, exactly where it should have been from the start. As I walked into my new office, his old one, I noticed something carved faintly into the wood of the desk, probably by some board executive years ago. "Truth doesn't need to shout." I smiled. For once, I believed it. In speech bubble, have you ever trusted someone who turned their success into your downfall? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to see more stories like this, about betrayal, justice, and the quiet art of revenge, subscribe and join me for the next one. Briefcase #corporate revenge. You said.